Let's talk now to the Policing Minister, Chris Philp, who joins me now in the studio. Good to talk to you today. I don't know if you had a chance to see our lead story on Sky News this morning, Alice Porter's report about a shocking number of people who are a victim of upskirting. 40% of victims are children from over 1,000 cases. There have only been 98 convictions. Do you think enough is being done to bring people to account for this?
Well, of course, it was this government who introduced the upskirting offence a few years ago. That until very recently, the offence didn't even exist in law. So I'm pleased this government took action by legislating. But yes, I would like to see more done to protect women and girls. I mean, from violence in general and from this offence in particular. I was especially shocked to see that 40% figure, 40% of victims being girls. You know, I've got a relatively young daughter, so that, as a father, that hugely concerns me. The government is putting more resources into fighting violence against women and girls. There's a VAUG strategy. We're particularly putting more resources into rape investigations. The Safer Streets funding is orientated towards areas where violence against women and girls is a particular problem. So a lot is being done, but I know the Home Secretary and the Safeguarding Minister, Sarah Dines, want to do even more.
Do you think part of the reason that there haven't been many convictions about this is to do with police training? And we're going to be talking to, a lot about the police, obviously, in the rest of the programme. But in terms of, yes, the offence has been brought in, yes, the legislation is there, but has the training come behind it to help the police work out how to investigate these crimes?
Well, there is a huge focus on the violence against women and girls agenda. There's a specific senior police officer, a chief officer, who is the national lead on these issues to make sure it is front and centre of police's mind. A lot of training has been given. There are some specialist units around the country, but I think there is more that can be done here. So I know the Home Secretary is very keen to make sure police forces do not lose focus on this issue. I mean, for example, rape charges, which had gone down for various reasons to do with disclosure, are now going significantly back up again. There's been a whole push behind that agenda. There's an operation called Soteria designed to improve the way rape and serious sexual assault gets investigated. So a lot of work is in train. The numbers are moving back in the right direction, going up.
They're still really small.
But they are still way too low, that's true, yes.
Yeah. So today you're bringing these new plans to strengthen the police dismissals process. We're 2 years on from the death of Sarah Everard. Why has it taken so long?
Well, we've been looking at this very carefully. A number of things have been done already, including a programme to put every single police officer in the country through the Police National Database to identify any issues of concern in their background. The measures we're announcing this morning will make sure that there is nowhere to hide for police officers who do not deserve to wear the uniform or carry the badge. That includes giving chief constables the power to chair misconduct panels. It includes making clear that gross misconduct will automatically lead to removal. It includes streamlining the process both for misconduct and for dismissal for poor performance, all of which taken together will mean there is zero tolerance for misconduct. We should, of course, keep in mind that the vast, vast majority of police officers are brave, are hard-working, put themselves in danger to protect us, the public, on a daily basis. We saw just a couple of days ago the tragic death of Sergeant Graham Saville, who was seriously injured and then died rescuing somebody from a train line. He saved somebody's life and then died himself. So the vast majority of officers are fundamentally brave, decent, hard-working, but this tiny minority who misbehave, who do terrible things, need to be rooted out, and these reforms are designed to make sure that happens.
You said that it's mandatory, that they would leave if they committed gross misconduct, but I understand in the wording of the document it says except in exceptional circumstances. I wonder what the exceptional circumstances would be if someone has committed gross misconduct, that they were allowed to stay in the police force.
Yeah, well, there's a normal legal sort of phrase you find exceptional circumstances that applies in the law, and as the name implies, it's supposed to be exceptionally rare. Just if there's some circumstance we haven't thought of, I can't think of what those would be. But just in law,
a loophole that's going to stop.
No, I don't think so. It's a fairly standard legal phrase you find in legislation and regulations, but I can't imagine what those would be.
You mentioned putting more responsibility on the shoulders of chief constables, that they will be involved in these panels. But there are others who will say, hang on, are they not just going to be protecting their mates? Plus, only 39% of chief constables are women. So, you're setting up a panel that is meant to primarily protect all of society, but largely women and girls. yet women still aren't fully represented on the main panel that's going to be making these decisions on.
Well, the panel, of course, will now be chaired by a senior police officer, not necessarily a chief constable, but a senior police officer. But there will also be 2 independent members, one of whom will be legally qualified. So that sort of independence you're talking about, and you're quite right to raise that, is represented by the fact that on a panel of 3, 2 will be independent. And then, of course, there's a right of appeal from that panel to the Police Appeals Tribunal. So it's quite a robust system with quite a lot of independent oversight.
You mentioned a little earlier about how all the police are now being put through the police's own database to check for whether they have any crimes on their record. I mean, some would look at
not just crimes, it's more than just that. It could be an adverse indicator that's not a crime they've been convicted of, but something else that should raise a red flag.
So, yeah, if someone they've worked with has raised a concern, for example. But isn't largely the problem not getting rid of these people? And they, they're often called bad apples, but, these are rapists and murderers, we've discovered. They're more than bad apples, aren't they? Isn't the problem not getting rid of them? It's the fact that they're in the system in the first place. And a lot of people have said that is because of the recruitment process has changed for the police. It's been outsourced by your government. And this has allowed people to come into the police force with a different level of checking than would have had in the past.
Well, recruitment is still done by the police. The actual process of hiring police officers ultimately is done by police forces. But what we have done is
the HR process, isn't it, that has been.
But what we have done. Well, each force has its own process. There's 43 different forces. They all do things a bit differently. What we have done is introduced in July of this year, so just a couple of months ago, a new statutory code of practice introduced by the College of Policing around vetting when people get hired in the first place. Secondly, we've got the data wash going on that I mentioned a moment ago, checking everybody through the Police National Database. That'll be complete later this year. And in addition to that, we're introducing, as part of today's announcement, a new requirement that it's not good enough just to be vetted on joining. A police officer has to maintain that vetted status throughout their career, so they'll get rechecked periodically to make sure that someone that may have got let in with a clean record doesn't then have something in their background 5 years later, or 10 years later even, that should lead to them being dismissed. So again, we're just tightening up the entire system in response to some of these terrible cases of the last 2 or 3 years.
And yet the latest research still shows that 51% of Londoners don't trust the police. Do you think these proposals will be enough to really shift the dial on that?
Yeah, well, obviously one of the reasons why there is a relatively new commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, is because the Met had those problems and the previous commissioner left. Mark Rowley and his deputy, Lynn Owens, are working to dramatically improve the Metropolitan Police. I think these measures are part of the solution, but they're not the only solution, because to build public confidence, they expect, obviously, officers who don't deserve to serve to be removed, but the public also expect crime to be properly investigated. And that's why on Monday of this week, we announced an agreement that we in government have reached with policing to make sure that every single crime, without exception, where there is a reasonable line of inquiry, which could be CCTV evidence, it could be stolen goods for sale online, it could be witness statements, it could be tracking devices on a stolen car or a stolen phone, where those reasonable lines of inquiry exist, they will always, for all crimes, be followed up. And I think that sort of zero-tolerance approach to criminality and that complete commitment to investigation will also help build public confidence. I'll just finish by saying, people don't sort of realise this, but if you look at the crime data, the only reliable source, according to the ONS, is the National Crime Survey, the Crime Survey of England and Wales, which shows since 2010, overall crime has dropped by, I think it's about 54%. So although there are challenges that we've been talking about, overall crime today is around about half the level it was in 2010, and that I think is obviously a good thing.
OK, but I have other figures which say that over 13 years crime's gone up 25%, but...
So you're probably looking at police-recorded crime, which exactly. The ONS say is not the most reliable measure because the police-recorded crime depends partly on how many crimes the public choose to report, and it also depends on the police, sort of how good they are at recording. And in the last 5 or 6 years, they've got much better at recording, which is good. So that's why the ONS say the only reliable measure is the crime survey. And according to the crime survey, crime is down about 54% overall on a like-for-like basis since 2010. And some specific crime types, like violence, are down about 46%.
OK, we'll leave it there. Chris Philp, Minister for Policing, good to talk to you. Thank you.